exams, get all of your hours, and become an architect rather than just being considered a designer and having to go straight to grad school. So there's kind of, I think UC Berkeley and CCA are really the two programs in the area that offer professional architecture degrees. So usually students are kind of deciding between those two. But we have lots of students who transfer. I think about 33 to 40%, depending on the year, of CCA students are transfer students. And the majority of those are coming from California community colleges. You guys are in a pretty good situation, you know, kind of as far as the country goes in terms of community college. We have like really the best system that's out there. So you can take your art classes here, bring them into not only UC or CSU, but a private school if that's the way that you want to go. And we've had lots of students transfer from all of the community colleges in the Bay Area and beyond, and be very successful at CCA. Our big thing is that we're interdisciplinary. So if you like to make a lot of different things, if you like crossover between different mediums, if you don't want to be like in one specific little niche, then CCA might be a really good fit. There are art schools that are going to be very focused, right? They're going to say, this is based on realistic drawing. That's what you do. We want that in your portfolio. That's what you're going to do while you're here. And then when you get out, that's when you have more freedom. That is not CCA. We're way on the other end of that spectrum. And when you're looking at private art schools, especially, they're going to be very different in terms of philosophy. Some are going to be super technical and super restrictive in their curriculum. Some are going to be super open, super conceptually focused. I'd say we fall very much on the open side of the curriculum, and we are both kind of technical and conceptual. So we're kind of in the middle there, but definitely not a school that's going to say like, you know, figure drawing, realistic painting, like those kind of things are not our focus. We want to kind of help you to be whatever kind of artist or designer you want to be. So these are some examples of courses that students take generally like in their third year. We have special interdisciplinary classes. There have been some really cool ones where like native weavers have come in and worked with the textiles class. They've grown dyes in the community garden for those as well. And they change every year too. So the faculty come up with really cool different classes. The other thing about art schools, they tend to be pretty small. So we're actually a medium-sized art school, but we've got about 1,300 students. If you add the grad students in there, that's 1,800. So a little under 2,000 people on campus total. So you get to know everyone. You know, there's not many people, but there's 22 different majors. So there's a lot of different stuff going on. And you can see right here, this big open space in our main campus. We call that the nave. So that actually used to be a Greyhound bus maintenance terminal. And they converted it into CCA in the 90s as part of the architecture program. And then we all moved in there. But it's really cool because we can open it up like this. All the walls fold open and it becomes this really collaborative, cool exhibition or celebration space. This looks like the craft fair in this picture that they do every year. But you also just wander through and sometimes there will be like a furniture critique going on. You can just stand there and listen. A lot of the classes will have their critiques in public, which is a little intimidating, but you know, prepares you for real life beyond art school. It doesn't get easier. But you get to know your faculty really well. And we're also the #1 best value art school for return on investment. So what that means is that they survey people who graduate from CCA and, you know, a number of years out, they are making more money than people who got degrees at similar art schools. Take that with a grain of salt. It's really different for an interaction design major and a ceramics major, right? So we're not going to say like, oh yeah, you're going to go out, you're going to make $100,000 a year as an artist right away. Like, no, there's different pathways. But in general, like across all of our students, they've been very successful. And we're one of the most 25 most diverse schools in the US across all types of colleges. Lots of international students, about 40% from, I think China and India are our biggest countries, but also Latin America, Asia, Africa, really everywhere around the world. So super diverse community, really fun place to be. And then the big exciting thing that we're doing is that currently we are in the process of building some new buildings at CCA. So as part of our campus unification, they have this really big project. This is actually a video here that I can't show you, unfortunately, but there's 2 or 3 buildings like this and sort of a double, they're calling it double ground because it's a 2-level campus. So underneath the beautiful green grass quad will actually be all of the like heavy machinery shops, metalworking, ceramics, all of that kind of equipment. And then right on top of that is sort of a more traditional campus feel, green space, and then classroom spaces in these buildings as well. They're going to be done with this fall 2024. Well, it'll open fall 24. So about a year and a half, these new facilities will all be open. In the meantime, we're kind of in temporary buildings right around CCA. So all of the studios still exist. No majors like not getting their facilities while this is going on. They're just kind of within 2 miles of the main campus. So everything's kind of surrounding like the design district, Soma, Potrero Hill kind of area in San Francisco. Students generally live on campus. This applies more for first-year students. For transfer students, there is a 1-year residency requirement to live on campus, but there's a lot of exemptions to that as well. So if you're bringing in 60 credits, if you're over the age of 23, if it's financial hardship, or if you live within 40 miles of campus, then generally you can get an exemption. We know it's a different situation for transfer students generally than someone coming straight out of high school. But if you want the dorms, we do have them. You can live on campus, have a meal plan, all of that. We have a brand new dining hall called Maker's Cafe, pizza oven, smoothie station, all those things for when you're starving in between studios and you need something really quick. And then another video here, sorry that I can't show you. And then we also have a number of clubs, cultural organizations. So another big area where we differ from like a state school is we don't have any sports. So, activities on campus tend to be more centered around student organized clubs, also professional organizations for a particular major, and clubs just for fun too. I know there was a bird watching club, a K-pop dance club. I think they started intramural soccer this semester. So that was also very cool. If you do want a little bit of exercise, at least there's that, and hiking. I think that's what most of our students end up doing. But it really is, 2,000 people really focused on art and design. That is the center of what we do. Since we're in San Francisco, we do have access to a lot of big companies too. So these are all visiting employers that came in 21, 22. You can see some pretty big names on there, obviously. Adobe's offices are actually across the street from CCA. We have a historic partnership with Google where they come into the classroom and co-teach a class and students get to see some of the offices. We do a lot of partnerships. So making connections for actually getting jobs out of school and actually, making an art school education into a career is something that's really important to us. This is another really cool industry partnership. So students in the architecture program got to work with Benthic Lab and Moss Landing Marine Laboratories on a prototype for a floating building. So this is a little miniature prototype of what could be a floating building that would have people inhabiting it. It would be a marine habitat on the bottom. It would also be a deterrent towards flooding during climate change, rising waters. That's another huge focus of especially our architecture programs, industrial design, that, the world is changing, the climate is changing, and we're going to have to adapt to kind of figure out what that's going to mean moving forward. Skip ahead a little bit here because I'll show you guys a lot more student work in the little portfolio presentation. But skip ahead to the important things, which are financial aid applications, things like that. So since I couldn't get my transfer presentation up, the only thing that's different here is this should say 15 to 20 pieces on the portfolio. So our application, pretty simple, online. You can also do the Common App, but most transfer students just use our application because it's less stuff to answer. A short essay, so 500 words or less, really about getting to know you as, an artist, designer, person, what challenges you've overcome, why you want to do, whatever thing it is that you're coming to CCA to do. Your transcripts, if you've done more than 30 credits in community college, then we don't need your high school transcripts. If you've done less, then we want to see both just for your kind of educational context. One letter of recommendation. Oh, something's popping up here, sorry. Proof of English proficiency if you're international, and then the really important thing that I'll talk about mostly, the portfolio. So pretty quick application. not a lot of chances for us to really get to know you. This is the thing that, we really want to emphasize that essay and your portfolio are really the places where you're going to tell us who you are as an artist, what you're interested in doing, what your aspirations are, what you're capable of, all of those really important questions. We don't have an interview, the essay's really short, so your artwork and the descriptions of it end up being a lot of that. We put so much emphasis on it because of those scholarships I mentioned earlier. So 83% of students receive some level of scholarship that can vary from $10,000 a year all the way up to that $24,000. And that's really based on the quality of your application. So if you have a really strong portfolio, you're a lot more likely to get a lot of money. Over 4 years, it's almost $100,000 that max award. So it really is a big difference. There's no separate scholarship application either. This is just based on your application. So as long as we have that and your FAFSA, you'll get a financial aid award. The other big thing, which is why I'm running around California right now, is that our priority deadline for this fall, if anyone's looking to transfer soon, is March 1st. So that's our scholarship deadline. So if you're looking to apply and be considered for those merit scholarships, March 1st is the date that you want to aim for. If you apply on March 3rd, March 4th, or your letter of recommendation comes in March 10th, you'll be fine. You'll still be considered for money. It's not a hard deadline. We technically have rolling admissions. So if you wanted to apply in August, you're like, no, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to apply really fast. I'm going to get up to San Francisco. We've had people do that before too. And generally they do still get some level of scholarship. It's just, we can't guarantee it anymore after March 1st. So if you're looking, right now, this is the time that you're ready to transfer. That's the date. If you're looking maybe at the spring, it's October 1st, which definitely gives you a little more time. In general, we're also very different than like the UC, CSU, IGETC kind of like transfer pathways that your advisors might be telling you to complete. We actually tell people not to finish their associates because they're going to end up doing a lot of extra work. If you're already there, you've already done that work, that's fine. We'll still take you, but a lot of your humanities probably won't apply to the CCA curriculum. It's pretty hard to transfer directly into your junior year to a private art school just because the curriculum is different. It's based on those studios in your sophomore year and it's sequential. So we actually tell people to talk to us a lot earlier, even if you're not sure you're going to transfer now. If this is your first semester and you're like, I want to transfer after this year, we'll recommend which classes you can take to actually, stay on track. We have a first year program at CCA, so everyone takes 4 studio classes their first year, along with art history, English, and philosophy, and all of those are super easy to knock out at almost any community college. It can really be any 4 studio art or design classes. So if you've done that, you're already into the second year at CCA, and then it really becomes about your particular major, all of those things. Since it's so complicated, you guys can also just email us your transcript and we can tell you like, hey, you've definitely done more than 4 studios. You start in the second year, you have a lot of credits. We recommend you apply and not take anything else because it'll actually harm you more than right time, money, all of those considerations. We do have articulation agreements with a lot of California community colleges. I don't think we have a 2+2 here. So we don't have a pathway directly into the third year necessarily, but if you're taking the right classes, coming in second semester sophomore year is pretty feasible. Some students come in beyond that. It really depends on your major. It's a lot easier to transfer painting than it is architecture, right? The curriculum is less specific. So if you're interested, you can talk to me and I can, give you all my info. I have cards and stuff up here that I can hand you guys. But that's the super quick rundown of this is CCA. Before I jump into more specific portfolio stuff, does anyone have questions, applications stuff, majors? I can go back up to that list of majors too here. That helps sometimes. Oh, God. Now I'm happy to jump into the portfolios too. Cool. All right. Too good a job, right? So I also just brought a ton of examples of really good student work from portfolios. So these are all students that applied to CCA, had a top portfolio rating. You'll see it's all really different work. So we have no specific requirements on our portfolio. It can be literally whatever kind of like art and design work you do. Anything from writing to film to animation to architecture. Some schools will say you need X number of figure drawings, whatever. We have no requirements as long as it's not performing arts, because we don't have those. So if it's, you know, your musical compositions and your acting reel, you probably don't want to be applying to CCA anyway. So we'll tell you that and ask you to resubmit the portfolio. But these are also really good examples of student work. Some of these students also received what's now called our Visionary Practices Scholarship, which is the one full tuition and fees scholarship that we have at CCA. So for some of our top applicants who are really, you know, telling us our story, have high financial need, it is possible to get full tuition and fees covered. I think we had 5 transfer students get that last semester. So, you know, it's not nothing. It's worth applying to see if you're interested. This is one of our painting students, Itzel Rios. She was struggling with issues of Mexican-American identity, feeling like, you know, she didn't belong in either culture, and was processing that through her paintings. You know, really technically impressive work, but also really conceptually strong, right? It's autobiographical. She's bringing in all of these different symbols. She's really working through something for a series of paintings. So this is something that, you know, really top example of a painting portfolio. Everything in this presentation too is, you know, what you shoot for. This isn't what it takes to be admitted. We like to put that up because a lot of times students will be like, I can't do that. And we're like, that's okay. We understand that people are coming in at different times. But, you know, if you're looking at that high scholarship amount, this is really kind of the standard that you kind of want to shoot for. This is a sculptural piece Sam was making here. So this was about scoliosis, surgeries, pain that they were dealing with. What we liked about this is really simple materials, right? They didn't spend a lot of money. This is wire, cotton, wax, string, and glass. But the effectiveness of what they created is really, really beautiful. You can see they're working in a series, which is really strong for portfolios. And also it's really well documented. This is Audrey Nee. So, you know, we put a big emphasis on interdisciplinarity at CCA. I really like this example because it's so simple, right? Simple photograph, self-portrait, and a watercolor talking about, you know, the issue of Asian hate. This was even before the pandemic, before things got worse. And, you know, also talking about her identity as well. A really effective pairing, right? Each piece on its own, you wouldn't understand as much of the message, but once you put them together, you have the titles, you start to feel what, you know, area she's really delving into. It's a little bit of a different direction. This is a graphic design student. You do have to pick a major when you apply to CCA, but your portfolio doesn't have to be specifically targeted for that major. So if you do have stuff in graphic design and you're applying in graphic design, definitely include it. Like we'll see, oh, they have 10 graphic design classes on the transcript and they only put paintings in their portfolio. And we'll be like, well, why are they applying to graphic design then? But, you know, if you are changing majors, right? If you've only taken your intro art classes, but you really want to be a filmmaker, it's okay not to have any film in there. Put your best work forward. You're applying to the college, not to the major specifically. You just have to choose one. What we really liked about this is, you know, pretty standard like branding assignment here, but the student took an extra step to create this like imaginary ad campaign too. So they set up this, you know, plastic shark fin here. They put the mutant New Hampshire license plate and created their own sort of magazine spread or like full screen ad. So taking that extra step of doing something to your work, you know, doing something else to it, not just sitting back and being like, oh, I did a really good job. That's awesome. All right, on to the next thing. I had a drawing professor who always said, never be impressed by your own talent. And I think that was really good advice because, you know, you'll transfer from here to an art school and all of a sudden you'll be like, whoa, everyone's really talented. Those people have been working a lot harder than me. And then you'll get out of school and you'll go into the world and you'll be like, oh my God, those people were working even harder. And so really putting in that work to like question the work that you've already done, write about it, do something else to it, push it to the next level. That's what kind of separates like, oh, this is a really strong portfolio, to the ones where we're like sharing it with the other admissions counselors and being like, oh, you guys got to come see what this kid did. And we definitely do that too. We like, we're all like super excited about it. Most of us have BFAs or MFAs. I am a printmaker and a painter, so I've been through art school twice. So we understand, you know, how hard it is to do this too. And we're evaluating from that perspective, right? It's another graphic design student who was doing packaging design. This kind of crosses over between graphic design, industrial design. But you know, they took the step of going beyond the computer rendering and printing and cutting these out, even if they had to do it one by hand. And then again, documenting it beautifully, right? Showing how the packaging fits together, showing them individually, seeing all of the intricate work that they did in illustration and typography. So really like pushing to the next level. This is my favorite slide, the one that's don't be afraid to be weird. Really, I like even more than whimsical. People also think a lot applying to art schools that like they need to seem like artistic and professional, and you know, oh, this is like they're serious, right? Like art school is serious. Like if you do something that's super weird and unique, and that's what you're really passionate about, we're going to be way more excited about that than your drawing one assignment. Again, this is a CCA perspective, right? We definitely get applicants who send us a portfolio and we're like, you have all these other classes. You mentioned you have like a full webtoon comic that you've been, you know, publishing for 5 years, and we didn't see any of that in your portfolio. And then they resubmit their portfolio and we're like, yeah, all of this work is amazing. So, you know, really like not being afraid to show us what it is that you do. We had a portfolio that was completely meatball themed. They did all sorts of different work. They did paintings, they did animations, graphic design, but they just made the whole thing about meatballs as a way to like structure how they would produce all of this work. They're like, you know what, I'm not going to have to think about the conceptual stuff. And it was amazing. We all still remember that portfolio years later. So, you know, keeping in mind, like, I have no idea what this student's artwork was about, but like, this is going to catch your eye a lot more quickly. Art school is super accepting, super open. It should be fun, right? Art and design are creative and enjoyable. So don't, you know, get too in your own head about, I have to make quote unquote a portfolio, right? If you're doing the work, the portfolio will come out naturally. This is a really cool piece because Enya was making work about kind of the fragmentation of their family because of immigration. And they really didn't have a lot of money for materials. So they used what they had, and instead of painting on canvas, they ended up pulling up these these cement pieces from like construction sites, the side of the road. And it really was a much more effective way for them to get their message across. This is a lot more interesting than if it was on a cheap canvas from Blick, right? And it has all of these different ways of being displayed. So, you know, again, not setting up roadblocks for yourself of like, I don't have enough money for the materials, I don't have enough time for this, right? Like finding ways to be flexible and work through it. I remade my entire portfolio for grad school in about 6 weeks. I did a portfolio review. I went to National Portfolio Day and got a bunch of feedback saying, I think you should wait another year. I think you're not quite ready yet. And I was like, no, you know what? Like, I'm going to dedicate myself right now to finishing another 15 paintings. And that's how I got into grad school. So it's doable. It's really intimidating. It's scary to share your work with people. This is another really cool one that was in a portfolio dealing with really serious issues. So he was talking about his dad's alcoholism. And so he was making drawings. He did this performance piece where he went out in the streets of San Francisco. I'll skip ahead to, he did these bottles with drawings of little like kind of comic book scenes from his dad's life. So you can see getting a DUI ticket and drinking and driving. Again, really creative. And it's really one project that he did that took up at least 5 or 6 slides in his portfolio. So you don't necessarily need 15 to 20 different pieces, right? Like if you're working on a series, if you're really diving deep on a subject, you can expand that. Similarly, sketchbook work can actually be useful to include sometimes in process if it's showing us something about like your thinking, what you're interested in. You can definitely include that. This piece I really like because the artist got other people to make the work for them. They set up this box with a bunch of weird objects that they made inside, and then they had people in the gallery put their hands in the box and try and figure out what they were feeling and make drawings of it. So, you know, they didn't have a specific idea of what these drawings were going to look like when they came out. This was about experimenting. This was about process. Definitely fun. I mean, they basically made this thing into a piñata. But really effective and interesting piece. And then, you know, starts to bring up really serious issues about like, okay, what does it mean to try and draw something that you couldn't see? And you get all of these different, interesting, really cool, you know, this one looks like a weird garbage octopus or something. I don't know. It's really like a cool project. Again, with documentation, that's why we really like to show this piece. Take good pictures of your art. If it's digital, that's usually pretty easy. If it's a 3D architectural model, that can be harder. But, you know, find your friend with the best iPhone at this point. If you can check out a camera from school, if you know someone who's a photographer, buy them lunch, take, you know, a good amount of hours to light and photograph your work. We definitely get the crooked painting leaned against the dorm room wall with some dirty laundry in the corner, and like, you know, we'll review it, but you really don't want distractions. You want to put your professional self forward. You're going to have to make some version of a portfolio for something else once you're out of school, right? For job applications, grants, residencies. So starting those habits, you know, buying a simple light kit if you can, getting 2 lights and a tripod and a camera, if you have the means to do so, can be really important. This is how most people will see your work. Unfortunately, most people aren't going to see what you do in person. They're going to see images of it. This is another fun, really like experimental piece. We like this one because, again, they didn't know what was going to come out when they started. So you don't have to have a vision of what your portfolio is going to look like. This was a ceramics student, and they made all of these little objects that, you know, almost look like creatures or something, and they just took them out in the world and started messing with them and photographing them. They put them into nylon stockings and hung them and put projections over them, right? Like they were just playing. And they had no idea what they were doing, but it's very unique, right? This is not something that I'm going to see in every portfolio, as opposed to the still life that you did in your drawing 1 class, right? So that's where we kind of try to emphasize at CCA. Like we think, you know, you're artists, you can show us what you're interested in. We can help you with the technical skills. We can build your software knowledge. You know, that stuff is important, but we can't artificially give you creativity, right? That's something that you have. That's why you're taking art classes. That's why you're here. And also, you know, if it's a big part of your work, telling your own personal story, let us know. Every slide that you submit is going to have a description field, and you can write about 2-3 paragraphs there if you want to. We really encourage that, right? Tell us why you made something. Tell us the story. How you made it can be important. The number of hours, for some reason, everyone's like, I spent 20 hours on this. I'm like, cool. Doesn't tell me anything else about it, right? You could have spent 2 hours or 500 hours on it, and it could be a really meaningful piece. So tell us why it's meaningful to you, rather than this was really hard, this is how long it took me. We show this one too, because, you know, we talked about all this different kind of work. So this is just very traditional painting. This student was a painter. She submitted a painting portfolio. A lot of her work was about representation and not seeing people in museums that looked like her, right? So she did a lot of self-portraiture, a lot of very daily life scenes. I really like the incorporation of like the posters here, and that's totally okay too, right? So your portfolio doesn't have to show us everything that you can do or every art class you ever took and say, oh yeah, I can do graphic design, but I also took film and I did this. Like, if you have a really great series of work in one medium and it's all focused around that, that's really cohesive. That tells us a story about who you are. Another student who's working in a similar way, he was dealing with issues of migration, and the idea of how the lust for gold is how a whole continent is colonized, and how he ended up, being born in Latin America and living where he lived. And so that's what he was thinking about. His whole portfolio was about that in different forms, both realistic drawing along with multimedia, with text, and this ship and the gold plating the gold leaf that you can see here. So you really can go in a million different directions. I have a bunch of these little booklets here, so you don't need to scan that QR code. This has a lot of the work that I showed in the presentation, and also just like general tips and tricks. Another thing that we often really encourage is if you can go to a National Portfolio Day, you definitely should. These are free, and you can go talk to, usually like 35 different art schools will attend each event, and you can get portfolio reviews. So CCA is there, Cal Arts, Art Center, all the East Coast schools, RISD, Pratt, all of the schools that are a member of what we call ACAD, which is the art and design schools in the US and Canada, will attend these and give you feedback on your work. It's a really, really useful thing to do. It's also really like nerve-wracking and exhausting. Like if you go talk to 10 people and they tell you what's wrong with your art, like that's hard, but it's really helpful because it doesn't get easier, right? Like once you're in critique for your thesis show, that's going to be a lot scarier than a National Portfolio Day. If you start getting that practice, you guys are in art clubs, critiquing each other's work here, you're already doing that. But this is a great way to do it. Admissions counselors and faculty, so people who have done this before are usually the ones doing that reviewing. And this is the one, if you want to take a picture of contact info. It's also on all the brochures that I brought here. But we're here as a resource for you guys if you're interested. We also do portfolio reviews one-on-one on Zoom. So anyone who doesn't have their portfolio today or isn't ready to talk about it, you can just sign up on our website and do it virtually. Even if it's right before you're about to apply and you're like, okay, I just want to check that this is okay. Like, am I totally way off base here? We have people do that all the time. So yeah, that's everything I have. If you have questions, let me know. If you have portfolios that you want me to look at and discuss, I'm happy to do that, one-on-one or in the group, however people feel least afraid. And we have a sign-up sheet if you're interested in getting on like our email list for application reminders and virtual events and things like that.
I think the only person that signed up was Warren. So signed up online formally, and then I don't know, did you also have a portfolio that like you want?
Even if it's not a whole thing too, like talking about there's a couple things like whatever, I can walk around.
Well, then I'm gonna leave. And I don't know if you want to just have a one-on-one moment.
Sure.
That'll be fine. And just take a nice little sit somewhere.
Yeah, if anyone wants either this is the general CCA info, the portfolio guide, and then the sign-up sheet for email, you can come out and grab that too.
Thank you so much for coming.
This is about the closest that I get to go anywhere. So yeah, in Mexico, I'll be in Mexico City. So we go all over the world.
Oh my goodness.
This year we had counselors who did Nigeria and South Africa and Kenya for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
This is really exciting. We go to India, Philippines. This is
That's super international. That's great.